The late 1960s in Northern California was a time of cultural revolution, but beneath the surface of peace and love, a shadow was growing. In the fog-heavy nights of the Bay Area, a predator began to move. He wasn't just a killer, he was a master of psychological warfare. He didn't just want to end lives. He wanted the world to watch. He performed his crimes, wrote about them, and taunted those meant to catch him. He turned his violence into a public spectacle, leaving behind a trail of ciphers and letters that would become one of the most complex unsolved mysteries in American history. He gave himself a name that would haunt the collective consciousness for decades. He called himself the Zodiac. Our story begins on December 20th, 1968, a freezing Friday night on Lake Herman Road, a remote lover's lane just outside the city of Vallejo. Inside a parked car sat two teenagers, 17-year-old David Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen. It was their first official date. A man approached their vehicle. Without warning, he opened fire. David was shot at close range. Betty Lou tried to run, but she was struck 5 times in the back. The brutality was absolute. No robbery took place. No motive was ever found. Just sudden, calculated violence under a dark California sky. The community was shaken, but the police had little to go on. No witnesses, no clues. The case began to go cold until 7 months later. July 4th, 1969, Independence Day. At Blue Rock Springs Park, another couple sat in a parked car seeking a quiet moment away from the festivities. Darlene Farron, 22, and Michael Majot, 19, were confronted by a man with a powerful flashlight. He stepped out and opened fire. Darlene did not survive. Michael, though hit multiple times, lived to tell the tale. He described the attacker as a heavy-set white man, about 5'8". Less than an hour after the shooting, the Vallejo Police Department received a call. A calm, methodical voice claimed responsibility for both attacks. The caller provided details that only the killer could know: the caliber of the weapon, the number of shots fired. He was giving them a map of his crimes. In August 1969, the terror escalated. 3 major Bay Area newspapers received near-identical letters. This time, the killer wanted to communicate with the public. The letters included a 3-part cipher. He demanded they be printed on the front page, threatening to kill more people if his request was denied. The editors were in an impossible position. To protect the public, they complied. The ciphers were published, and the hunt for a codebreaker began. A high school teacher, Donald Hardin, and his wife, Betty, spent days hunched over the symbols. They were the ones who finally broke the first code. The message was terrifying. It didn't provide a name. Instead, it offered a window into a disturbed mind. "I like killing because it is so much fun," it began. He claimed that every person he killed would become his slave in the afterlife. It was a boast of power, a taunt to a society that couldn't stop him. From this point on, he signed every letter with this symbol: a circle with a cross, a crosshair, the mark of the Zodiac. September 27th, 1969, a beautiful Saturday afternoon at Lake Berryessa. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were enjoying a quiet picnic by the shore. A man emerged from the trees. He wore a black executioner's hood, meticulously sewn with his signature symbol. He wasn't just a killer, he was playing a role. He tied them both up. Then he used a knife. The attack was slow and personal. Cecilia would later succumb to her wounds, but Brian survived. After the attack, the killer didn't just flee. He walked to their car and used a black marker to write a message on the door, a tally of his murders. Vallejo, Blue Rock Springs, Lake Berryessa. He was documenting his own dark history for the world to find. He was untouchable. 2 weeks later, the Zodiac moved into the heart of the city. San Francisco, October 11th, 1969. A quiet residential neighborhood called Presidio Heights. Paul Stein, a 29-year-old taxi driver, picked up a passenger. He was directed to the intersection of Washington and Cherry Streets. It was his last fare. Stein was shot in the head. The killer took his wallet and his keys. But most importantly, he took a piece of Paul Stein's blood-stained shirt. Witnesses watched from a window across the street. They called the police, providing a description of a man walking away from the scene. The police were minutes away. And then, a critical failure. Due to a radio error, officers were looking for a black suspect. They encountered a white man walking away, and they let him go. That man was almost certainly the Zodiac. It was the closest law enforcement would ever come to catching him. He had walked right past them. Days later, the San Francisco Chronicle received another letter. Inside was the piece of Paul Stein's shirt. The proof was undeniable. The Zodiac was in the city. In his letter, he mocked the police. He ridiculed them for letting him walk away. His ego was expanding alongside his body count. The Zodiac's story is a labyrinth of missed opportunities and dark puzzles. If you want to follow us deeper into these mysteries, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. The terror didn't stop with the killings. The Zodiac began threatening school buses. He claimed he would shoot the tires and pick off the children as they bounced out. He sent diagrams of bombs. He claimed he was building a death machine that would be impossible to detect. The entire region was on high alert. He sent a Halloween card to a reporter, Paul Avery. It was another performance, another way to stay in the headlines without revealing his identity. He sent 2 more short ciphers, the Z13 and the Z32. For decades, they remained unbroken, taunting every cryptographer who dared to try. In 1970, a woman named Kathleen Johns escaped from a man who had sabotaged her car. The Zodiac later claimed credit for her abduction, but it was never proven. By the early 1970s, the letters began to slow. The frantic pace of his communication was fading. The world was left with his ciphers and his silence. The last widely accepted Zodiac letter arrived in 1974. After that, he vanished. No more letters, no more confirmed killings, just a void in the investigation. Police from multiple jurisdictions worked together, sharing composite sketches and fingerprints. They had DNA from stamps, but the technology wasn't there yet. One name rose above the rest: Arthur Lee Allen. He was a Vallejo resident with a history that made him the perfect suspect in the eyes of many. He owned the same military-style boots found at Lake Berryessa. He wore a Zodiac watch. He had talked to friends about hunting people like animals, but the hard evidence didn't stick. Handwriting experts were divided. DNA testing on the stamps years later did not match Allen's profile. Arthur Lee. Allen died in 1992 without ever being charged. He took his secrets to the grave, leaving the mystery of the Zodiac more fractured than ever. Dozens of other men have been proposed as the killer over the decades. Every few years, a new definitive suspect emerges, but none have ever been proven. And then, after 51 years of resistance, the silence was broken again. In December 2020, a breakthrough finally happened. A team of international code breakers solved the 340-character cipher. It was a masterpiece of encryption that had defied the world's best minds for half a century. The message was as cold as the first. "I hope you are having lots of fun in trying to catch me," it said. The tone was exactly the same as the 1960s letters. He claimed he was not afraid of the gas chamber because it would only send him to paradise sooner. The name, however, remained a secret. The Z13 and Z32 ciphers are still out there. Short, cryptic, and perhaps containing the final answer. But for now, they remain silent. Behind the puzzles and the letters are the victims. 5 confirmed lives taken, many more claimed. Their families are still waiting for the final truth. 50 years later, the case is still open. The identity of the Zodiac is the great ghost of American true crime, a mystery that refuses to die. The sketches still circulate. The DNA is still being tested with new techniques. But the man who claimed his victims would be his slaves remains a shadow. The question remains the same as it was in 1969. The question that has outlived the killer himself. Who was he? The Zodiac might have taken his name to the grave, but the search continues. What do you think? Was it Arthur Lee Allen, or someone we've never seen? Leave your theories in the comments below. We'll be back with more deep dives into the world's most enduring mysteries. Thanks for watching.